Well, welcome back to World History and Literature. This is week 2 of our course. We're going to look at setting the stage for change. Before we dive into specifics, specific events and things like that, I want to take a sort of a pull back 24,000 feet above the globe, sort of a Google Earth sort of view, and see what is going on in those 15th and 16th centuries that are sort of setting the stage, setting the globe up for this huge astronomical kind of shift from traditional history, traditional way of life into modern life. So without further ado, let's just jump in. All right, we're going to do a quick review, go into some questions as we're probing into this big picture of history. What questions should we be asking ourselves? And then at this video, we're going to look into East Asia and what sort of is being set up during this time and in that region. Again, we're doing traditional history into modern history. There's this big shift. I have said in lectures prior that we're looking at about 1760, right around that era, that time frame between that and 1800. That is when the world gets turned upside down and the way people live changes. So we need to ask some questions on this modernization, on this great divide of history. Was it sudden or was it a slow change? Was it predetermined? It was just genetic, as some evolutionists would argue. Or is it just a matter of sheer luck? People just were in the right place, the right time. Was it material, resources driven, or was it cultural or philosophically driven? What about technological advancements? Why did some countries, some regions, some nation groups, why did they explode technologically speaking, while others pretty much stayed the same? And why England? Why Western Europe? Why did that seem to be sort of the epicenter of this big explosion into modernization? And of course, because that did happen and other places didn't, there is this division of power, this division of advancements, this division of modernization that is taking place during this time. So what is this great divide? What caused such a great divide of peoples throughout the globe? Back in the early 1700s, this is sort of the powers that be, so to speak. 1600s, 1700s. You had the Russian Empire, the Manchu Qing Empire, you had the Mughal Empire, Safavid Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. These were the big dogs on the playground, so to speak. And I want to look at some of the things that changed these empires. Some rose to power, even greater power, and some sort of declined or sort of got their feet stuck in cement of the traditional world. And one of the components of that was how they were able or unable to consolidate their power. And so we're going to look at that particular business first. These folks, these regions were for thousands of years controlled by armies and warlords and clans and people groups that were on horseback with bows and arrows and spears and swords and things like that. They didn't have modern technology until about the time of the gunpowder invention. And not all of these folks were able to sort of recognize that opportunity and take advantage of it, consolidate powers and peoples and families, and pull the resources together, pull the finances together, pull the technology and the development and knowledge together in order to strengthen and unify their empires or their particular nation groups. And if you look sort of like, that's one area. And if you go back and look at it, you'll see that Europe is not even really on the map. It's there, but it's not really a superpower yet. And part of the reason is look before the 1500s. Before 1500, this is the trade route. This is the world of the European. It's pretty much just what's in the Mediterranean, and that's about it. Yes, when Columbus discovers the New World, along with some other explorers, 1492, he sailed the ocean blue. This opens up new revenues, new resources, new opportunities. Of course, it opens up new problems. But this was the world of Europe in the 1500s. Whereas going back to this set of empires, they were already interchanging with one another long before then. So Europe is sort of behind the mark, they're not quite where everyone else is yet, but they're going to get up there quickly. Because look at this one, by 1770, look how prolific they have become in their exploration, their colonization, their ability to connect with other countries and their resources. Just this pause for just a moment. Think of England. Think of England. This is a little itty bitty island. At some point, are you going to run out of resources in that little bitty island compared to the rest of the world? Of course you are. I mean, how much coal, how much raw resources can come out of it? At some point, you're going to have to expand into other territories, other lands, in order to keep growing and stay on top. Otherwise, you're just going to get squished like a bug. Well, that's what Europe is going to be doing. You zoom in, look at all the activity that is there. Europe has connections all the way around the Horn of Africa into India, along the eastern coast of India. There is, Spain is completely all over the New World in North, Central, and South America. Portugal has taken over the eastern part of South America. And then all those Indonesian islands, the Philippines, and those areas just between Southeast Asia and Australia. All of that is being richly mined, so to speak, through trade. So it's very, very active by the 1770s. But how do we get there? How do we go from one to the other? I want to look at these different regions, these main big dogs, before we look at Europe. We'll look at Europe in part 3, but in this one I want to look at, for the first part, I want to look at Eastern Asia, that area that is listed here as Manchu Qing Dynasty Empire, and further east into Japan. So, stepping back a little bit, going back to about the 1400s, the Ming Dynasty. Oh my goodness, this is a massive dynasty. And they are growing and innovating. They are building ships. You can still go to China today and see the old shipyards where they built these massive, massive ships. The Ming Dynasty had an armada of ships, multiple massive ships. You compare Christopher Columbus's ship, which is about like that in scale, to one of the Ming Dynasty's main flagships, cargo ships, which was like massive compared to what Christopher Columbus was able to sail in. These folks were really moving, they were advancing, they were taking advantage of knowledge, and they were trading. Look at all the trade routes that they had, the people groups that they were coming in contact with, the resources that they were able to pull back into the dynasty. Sadly, there was a group of influential people in the Ming Dynasty that saw this progressive advancement, so to speak, with the outside world as dangerous. Dangerous to the traditions of the culture and the people and their religious beliefs. And so they started influencing the leadership to shut down, so to speak, foreign trade, foreign travel. It's even believed by some scholars that within the Ming Dynasty during the early 1425, right around there, if I remember correctly, that they were the actual ones that first discovered North America, not Christopher Columbus. So they were advanced, but for whatever reason, this idea of being more an isolationist, focusing more inwardly, protecting from outside bad influences. That was where the Ming Dynasty started to go. And so as you moved into the 1500s, the focus was more on the inside, what was going on domestically, so to speak. Up in the northeast, you had the Manchu people that were trying to come down and invade. Further north and northwest, there was the Mongols. These, of course, were people on horseback, warlords, clans trying to come down and take over. And as the Ming Dynasty sort of focused on those types of things, it eventually sort of crumbled. It wasn't able to fight back as well. And so in the 1600s, the Ming Dynasty falls to the Manchurian people that invade from the northeast, which is just above modern-day Korea. And this became the Qing Dynasty. As the Qing Dynasty came in, the Manchurians came in, they said, we're not going to stick with what we have. We're going to expand more. Look at all the arrows and where they went. They almost doubled the size of their territory, their region. But even though they reached their heights in the mid-1700s and lasted until the 1900s, they still were very isolationist in their worldview. They only had one or two trading posts, they called them factories, on the very southern coastal regions. This one is in Canton. You can see the British East Indian Company flying the flag there. That was one of the largest traders there. It will become one of the most influential in that region. But it was still very limited. You pulled your ship up, you did a little transaction there at the pier, and that was about it. You couldn't get inside. You didn't go into and infiltrate and mingle with the people because the people wanted that distance. And it wasn't only true with the Qing Dynasty, it was also true further east in Japan. You had a lot of shogunates flipping and flopping and changing rule and fighting with one another, and they didn't want outside influences much either. There was one factory, one trading post in Nagasaki where it's indicated here, but other than that, it was pretty limited. These folks did not want that outside foreign influence to corrupt their region. So, with this idea of isolationism, wanting to protect oneself and your culture and kind of stick to old ways, the traditional ways, that's the situation that is coming up with East Asia. But that creates certain problems. The rest of the world is starting to advance and you're kind of staying the way you are. Are there any opportunities that are popping up in this time frame? Based on those problems and opportunities you weigh back and forth, what kind of choices do you have? Situation from East Asia. East Asia countries take an isolation position. Trade is restricted. If trade is restricted, then generally global exchange of knowledge is also slowed way down. And the focus becomes internal rather than international. And that's sort of where East Asia is as we're moving into that mid-1700s. So what would you do if you were part of the Qing Dynasty? You were the ruler of the Qing Dynasty. You were one of the leaders of Japan. What would you do? How would you weigh your circumstances, the benefits possible, the problems that you're facing? Where are you going to come up with a choice? That is what is coming up next in future lectures. But now I want to look towards Southeast Asia and the regions of India and Indonesia. So go take a break and we'll be right back.